Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today is October 6, 2020 and we're going to be looking at the electoral map Trump versus Biden if the polls were as wrong as they were in 2016. This is similar to a video done by Elections Predictions Official, another YouTube channel. You should check them out. Their content is absolutely amazing. But they did their video on August 30th, 2020. It's now a month later and things can change. So I thought I'd give an updated version. Furthermore, they compared the RCP averages in 2016 to the 538 averages of 2020. I thought I'd use the RCP averages for both. And they compared the election day RCP averages in 2016 to the August 30th averages in 2020. I used the October 6th averages in both cases. Thus, the polls that I'm using are exactly 4 years apart and take place at exactly the same time in the election cycle. That said, let's get started. This map shows the states as characterized by the current polls. As you can see, this doesn't look very good for Donald Trump. But do the corrections change anything? And spoiler alert, they do. We'll start with Nevada. We'll start with the western states and move to the East Coast, and we'll consider only the swing states. We're not going to characterize Maine's 2nd Congressional District and Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District, since there is not a lot of data out of those. That said, let's start with the state of Nevada. Nevada was expected to go to Hillary Clinton by 2.4 points. Or rather, was expected to go by 1.4, but she ended up winning it by 2.4. That is a leftward shift of 1.0, and adding that on to Biden's lead of 5.3 per polls today, we get Biden plus 6.3. That is between 5 and 10. Thus, we give it still a likely characterization. The characterization of Nevada does not change. Actually, per polls, Arizona is in the lean Democratic column. That is how polls characterize Arizona. They say that Biden will win the state of Arizona by 3.4 points. That would be a flip over the Republican map in 2016. That would be a decently large loss for the Republican Party. Back in the day, they thought Trump would win by 1.0. Trump won by 3.5. That's a rightward shift of 2.5. That eats into Biden's lead of 3.4, giving Biden 0.9 points in the lead in Arizona, which is enough to shift it into the tilt Democratic column, but is not enough to flip it. And if Democrats win the state of Arizona in 2020, that is just one more obstacle for the Republicans to overcome if they are to win the White House in 2020, in November. Now, the state of Texas. It will be a colossal loss for the Republicans if they lose Texas. Texas and its 38 electoral votes have gone consistently to the Republican Party for many election cycles now, and if they lose Texas, they are pretty much certain to lose the election. That being said, Trump is expected to win per polls by 3.2 points. Trump won the state by 6.7 back in 2016. Well, actually, he won it by 9 in 2016, and polls predicted he win it by 6.7 in 2016. That is a rightward shift of 2.3, and adding that on to the 3.2 he already has, we see that Trump is up by 5.5 in Texas. Not a lean characterization, but a likely characterization between 5 and 10 points. Thus, Texas may not be as easy to flip as some Democrat pundits might think. On to the state of Florida, which is another must-win for the Trump campaign. If Trump doesn't win Florida, it's almost over. Hillary Clinton was expected to win the state by 2.4 points, but Trump edged out by 1.2. That's a rightward shift of 3.6. Currently, Biden is expected to win by 3.5, and that 3.6 rightward shift barely edges out Biden's lead and makes it Trump plus 0.1. But still, that is enough to shift it from lean Democrat to tilt, the tiltiest of tilt, Republican. Very interesting. But basically, Florida is a pure toss-up. State of Georgia. Actually, polls believe that Georgia will go to the Democratic column by 0.3 points. That would be another massive loss for the GOP. Georgia is another must-win. Trump was expected to win the state by 5 points in 2016, and polls were very accurate. Trump won the state by 5.1. That's a rightward shift of 0.1 points, but it is not enough to cancel out Biden's 0.3 lead. Thus, Georgia stays in the tilt Democratic column. North Carolina. North Carolina is currently expected to go to Biden by 1.2. It was expected to go to Clinton by 2.6, but Trump ended up winning it by 3.7. That's a rightward shift of 6.3. And if we add that on to the 1.2 margin, we get Trump plus 5.1, putting it not as tilt, not as lean, but as likely Republican. That means it is predicted to vote significantly to the right of Georgia. Very interesting stuff. And now the Rust Belt, the consequential set of states which gave Trump the election in 2016. What will happen this cycle? Well, in the state of Pennsylvania, Hillary Clinton was expected to win the state by 6 points. Trump ended up edging it out by 0.7. That's a massive rightward shift of 6.7. Biden currently is expected to win by 6.5. And if we apply the 6.7 to the 6.5, we get Trump plus 0.2, barely enough for the tilt Republican column. The state of Ohio. Trump was expected to win the state by 1.6. He ended up winning it by 8.1. That's another massive rightward shift of 6.5 points. That easily eats out Biden's 1.2 point lead today, making it Trump plus 5.3, making it not lean Democratic, but likely Republican, as seen here. State of Michigan. Michigan was expected to go to Clinton by 7 points, and it went to Trump by 0.3. Trump barely edged out there. Major surprise for everybody that election night. Biden is expected to win it by 5.8. However, once we apply the 7.3 rightward shift, we get Trump plus 1.5, making it not tilt, but actually lean Republican. State of Wisconsin. Clinton was expected to win by 5.8. Trump ended up winning by 0.7. That's a rightward shift, another massive rightward shift of 6.5 points, eating up Biden's 5.6 lead in the state, making Trump 0.9 good enough for a tilt Republican characterization. As you can see, Trump is already winning. Interestingly enough, if the polls are as dead wrong as they were in 2016. But let's move on. State of Minnesota. Clinton was expected to win by 4.3. She won by 1.5. That's a rightward shift of 2.8. That is definitely not enough to eat up Biden's lead in the state. Biden's massive lead of 9.4 points, but it is enough to make his lead a little bit less to 6.6. However, both of those numbers are between 5 and 10, so we'll keep Minnesota in the likely Democratic column. So Iowa is actually expected to go to Joe Biden by 0.5 points. So by polls, we have a tilt Democratic characterization. Trump won the state by a massive margin back in the day, by 9.5 points, but a likely Republican margin, almost safe, actually. He was expected to win by 5 points per polls. That's a rightward shift of 4.5 points, easily eating up Biden's 0.5 point margin, making it lean Republican. And finally, we have the state of New Hampshire, which Clinton barely edged out by 0.3 points despite having a 5-point lead. That is a rightward shift of 4.7 points, but it is not nearly enough to edge out Biden's lead of 8.4 in the state today. It is enough to make it a lean Democratic characterization rather than a likely Democratic characterization. Now, this is an interesting election prediction. We have Georgia going to the Democrats, but we have the Rust Belt going to the Republicans like last time. If this map were to come about, Trump would be one of only 3 presidents, the other 2 being Barack Obama and Woodrow Wilson, to win the Electoral College a second time with fewer votes than he won it the first time with. And he would be the only president to win both election and re-election without the popular vote. Trump supporters, you may have hope. Biden supporters, don't count Trump out.